Tracking the tropics as one final hurrah to hurricane season may enter the Caribbean. Meanwhile, a mid-latitude cyclone ramping up over the lower 48. Welcome in, folks. Happy Tuesday, October 14th, and we're rolling right on through the month of October. We can already see the light to 2026, which crazy to even think that 2026 is only about 2.5 months away. I don't really know what ended up happening into 2025, but a quick year it was and a pretty eventful one, and we're continuing that trend as I am watching the Caribbean for maybe one final chance of development this hurricane season. Also going to get a pretty good storm system to cross the lower 48 here throughout this week. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorologist at WCCB Charlotte. If you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. I'm the only one that runs this channel, so it's just me here. There's nobody behind the scenes pulling the strings, so it's always my honor and privilege to give you my true opinion on what I think is going to happen and kind of all the analysis, and that's really what we like to do here on the channel, and I appreciate all of you joining me. All right, let's go ahead and dive right on into things and start talking about that forecast. Looping next to me is the latest run of our American forecast model, and continuing right there you see into the Caribbean, showing something trying to get going here. Now, what exactly that is or what it could be is to be seen, and a lot to figure out there, and plenty of time to figure it out as well, but that's one big thing we'll be talking about. And then you can see that other storm system kind of cranking up across the lower 48 over the next 7 days or so. You can see it coming right here and working on through and likely to bring some impactful weather. So we'll be breaking that down as well. Let's start here, though. Let's go ahead and take a look at our satellite, and we're going to start with the tropics today, and then we'll move to that weather back home that's going to be developing. So just a wide kind of look at the Atlantic basin here. You can see we've got a couple areas of interest. I'll go ahead and circle what immediately probably jumps out to you. That's all of this action up here. This is just the jet stream doing jet stream things, creating some storminess, but not going to be anything tropical out of that. In fact, this is leftover bits of our nor'easter out here that impacted the East Coast over the past couple of days, and another mid-latitude cyclone up off the screen here, helping to pull in a lot of this moisture. So all that doesn't really matter. Down here, though, Tropical Storm Lorenzo did form over the past 48 hours or so, getting a name and not looking the best this morning, but we'll dive into that more so in a moment. And then it's just south of the Cape Verde Islands. I'm watching this next wave for potential development chances in the next 7 to 10 days or so. And then I think after that, not to say for sure, but for, pretty high probability that we can kind of shut off Atlantic hurricane season and hopefully start talking about winter storms, right? I think we would all be very excited for that. Just to quickly show you what the NHC is tracking, only Lorenzo. That's the only thing that they see developing in the Atlantic, at least, over the next 7 days. And right now, sitting at tropical storm status, about 60-mile-an-hour winds, 55, that range. And the track, a bit of a wonky one, but either way, you can see not really anywhere near land here. In fact, about as far away from land as you can get into the Atlantic, just doing loops. So not overly worried about Lorenzo being a big concern for anybody. But again, we do need to watch that area in the Caribbean. So let's go ahead and start talking about that one a little bit more in depth. And, it's not in the Caribbean yet, I should say, but whenever it gets there, it could become a problem. So let's go ahead and analyze that data. Zooming in on those two areas a little bit more, and again, you can see Lorenzo here trying to get going. Looks like it's dealing with some shear and dry air. It looks like this is the center of circulation, trying to get some new convection going, trying to organize, but again, we're really not going to focus so much on Lorenzo because it's not going to be a problem for anybody as it stands right now. Here's the next wave, though, and you can see it's maintaining deep convection pretty well. So I would say already doing better than maybe some of the models have had it doing, in the shorter range, except for the Canadian model, which you'll see in a moment is going kind of berserks with this one. But it's got some upper-level divergence, it looks like. You can see some of those upper-level cirrus clouds fanning out. It looks like a pretty good marsupial pouch here as well, just meaning it's got a tight area of that convection, of that moisture, and kind of helping to create its own environment. So, not the ugliest looking thing we've ever seen by any means. And we'll look at visible satellite as well, if I can pull that up and see if we can see any other interesting features with this one. All right, so we've definitely got lightning. You can see lightning are all of these little yellow flashes. And another thing you can look for is if you see any downdrafts. If you see downdrafts, normally that means a storm is struggling. I don't see any personally. Again, I think this is more upper level cirrus outflow than lower level downdrafts. All things considered, looks like a relatively healthy system right now. NHC still hasn't tagged it. Maybe they do this afternoon with at least a low end chance of developing. But I think most models and most agreement is while it looks okay now, it really won't have a chance to run until it gets towards the Caribbean. But it's in like I said, a pretty good area in terms of moisture. We've got dry air to the north up towards Lorenzo, but over this storm, over a pretty sound environment here with plenty of moisture for this one to work with. And you can see it's obviously taking advantage of that with a lot of deeper moisture in these thunderstorms right on the northern side of the wave envelope. Here's the other thing it's got that is going to be something we need to watch. Plenty of warm oceans ahead of it. And remember, this one's starting pretty far south. It's kind of down here, a little bit further south in the Atlantic than maybe you would normally see a storm form. But the waters are warmer down here. Now, it can't go too far south or else it's not going to have enough Coriolis spin to even form. And that's one thing that maybe could be holding it back a little bit. Like I said, it is quite far down here. In fact, it's at the same latitude as about Venezuela. So if it were to not pull north at all, it would run right into South America. But ahead of it, again, plenty warm waters, especially, I know I keep saying it, but especially in the Caribbean. Again, almost rocket fuel levels of sea surface temperatures here to support development. All right, let's go ahead and show you some models and show you why they don't show it developing quickly, but why, once it finds those warmer ocean temperatures and some other atmospheric conditions, it could have a shot. Let's start by just showing you some model data on what they have this storm doing, or wave, or whatever you want to call it, over the next couple of days. Here's the GFS. This is a lower level vorticity, so remember this shows a spin in the atmosphere down near the surface, not right at the surface, but down close enough to it. Here's Lorenzo. If I could circle the thing properly, that would help, right? There we go. There's Lorenzo. Obviously, that one having a tight, compact core and plenty of spin, as it is already a named storm. This little area down here is what we're watching as our current wave. You can see not fully formed, obviously, but it has some spin with it nonetheless. The GFS maintains that spin, doesn't really strengthen it though till right around the end of the loop as it gets into the Caribbean. What does the European model show? Well, the European, again, here's Lorenzo initiating or initializing it a little bit weaker than the GFS is, but nonetheless, I should say, here's the open wave. Notice the European already starting with the wave weaker. That's what it looks like on the European right now at initialization. Actually, let's go one further ahead. That's technically initialization. Actually, no, this is. Either way, point stands. You can see the wave there. Here's the GFS at the same time. Let me back it back up. And you can see, I think the GFS is a little more compact with this one, at least in the near term. And I would agree with the GFS. I think it looks all right on satellite. Looks like it's got things going for it. So either way, you go ahead in time on the European, and it's pretty similar to the GFS. Gets strung out here, but it's even weaker on the European. The European has it with even less spin and much more of just an open, weak wave over the next 5 days or so as it crosses the MDR. There's another model, though, the Canadian, and I'll show you precipitation with this one because you don't need to see the vorticity map to know what's happening, because the Canadian just blows this system up later on, right around here. This is by this weekend. We've easily got a named storm, tropical storm, approaching the Antilles. This is a lower end probability scenario, but not impossible, and you'll see why here in a second, and plows it right through the Antilles as a tropical storm, strengthens it into a hurricane, and then eventually, within the next 7 to 10 days, has it impacting Puerto Rico and Hispaniola before pulling up into the open Atlantic. That's one model, and obviously the other two showed nothing in the next 5 days. The Canadian shows something. Well, let's show you the atmospheric conditions, and I'll tell you why it should have a chance to develop like the Canadian says, but also why it's not a very high likely scenario right now, at least in the nearer term. The upper level wind pattern over this system right now is not half bad. We've got a little bit of an upper level anticyclone helping to fan it out. You saw that on satellite with that upper level cirrus deck kind of getting fanned out a bit. So, it's not perfect, but it's all right. And it kind of keeps in this favorable environment for a while now. You can see this upper level anticyclone, this upper level divergence or diffluence aloft. Basically, again, all these arrows just going in different directions. Again, I don't know what in the world this arrow was. I don't know what I'm doing this morning. I cannot draw to save my life. There we go. Either way, you can see it's spreading apart. And if the storm can stay under that, kind of like the Canadian shows it doing, it very well could have a room to run. And then on the European model, at least as we start to get towards this coming weekend, remember, to this point, the storm would start getting closer to the islands and still having a very favorable, or at least moderately favorable, upper level pattern with these wind arrows spreading apart. What about humidity? What about dry air? Do we need to worry about that? Well, like we've been looking at right now, it's in a pretty moist environment. In fact, I'd say it's even more moist than maybe the model is initializing at here. But over time, there is going to be some dry air threatening to the north. Now, If the system can maintain that marsupial pouch I mentioned, or that pocket of moisture around it, then all this dry air up here to the north might not be a problem. But if it can intrude into the system, it could kill it off into the Atlantic before it ever even has a chance to run. So it's one of those things that I understand why the models are struggling, because some of them I think are doing a pretty good job at picking up on the current conditions. Others, not so much. Also, it's a fine line where the system is kind of in between favorable environments for now. Once it gets to the Caribbean, though, I think there's going to be a higher end chance for it to develop. It's right around this time that it gets there. Remember, late this week and into early next week. And the latest European does show some upper level winds, a bit of the jet stream coming down, and that could hinder it. But out into the Western Caribbean, the central to Western Caribbean, we've got a lot of just calm winds. And like I mentioned, explosive levels of sea surface temperatures. Not only that, but as I've been showing for the past couple of days and really the past week or two, the ocean heat content out here is very high. So that means, again, just there's a lot of fuel for a system. So if it can find this favorable upper level pattern, and if we take a look at the relative humidity map, you'll also be able to see that in the same time frame, yeah, there's some moisture out here. Not perfect, but some. And again, the European more unfavorable than the other models. In fact, I'll show you this, the GFS. And I'll just show you the actual rainfall map. Actually, no, we'll keep it on this. We'll keep it on humidity. And you can see GFS, a little more humid out here, a little bit more moisture. And because of that, right at about 10 days from now, blows this thing up into the Caribbean as a major hurricane. And then even almost gets another area out here. So yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I think it's at this time frame we need to watch. Obviously, this is 10 days from now, but showing a major hurricane in the Caribbean as conditions could become more favorable. Excuse me. Now, let me show you the ensembles, though, because, I would feel bad about myself if I didn't, because I think it's the more important tool to show and use. So what does it show with this system? Well, here are the European ensembles. This is 10 days from now, and yeah, still maintaining that there's a pretty good signal here for something to potentially be getting into the Western Caribbean and maybe develop. Now, the question then after that would be, obviously, does it plow into Central America? Does it pull up north towards the U.S.? Does it try out to sea, or obviously hitting islands before out to sea, but away from the United States? All of that, speculation at this point in the system would even need to form, and that is not something that is guaranteed right now. But, a pretty good signal nonetheless from the European that we've got some juice out here once we get about 7 to 10 days from now. The GFS, similar in its ensembles. You could see some noise in here showing, yeah, maybe we get this system to develop. The GFS wants to start pulling it north around 10 days out, whatever it may be and wherever it may be. What about the AI models, that they've done pretty well this year? And yeah, what is that? Well, that's a pretty big signal. Now, I'll mention this is more than 10 days out. This one goes about 10 to 13 days out or so. So obviously, more further out in time, and thus lower certainty and higher unpredictable scenarios that could happen in between now and then. But nonetheless, a pretty strong signal. And another thing to note is the colors. So yeah, we got a lot of pink and colors, pink and reddish colors in here. Those are stronger storms. So like I said, I think if something forms out here and we get just low enough wind shear, the sky is the limit. It could run, with anything, intensity wise. So that's something to keep a very close eye on, something we need to watch. But yeah, definitely a signal, but plenty of time to watch it, as this one's still just coming off the coast of Africa and not even designated by the National Hurricane Center yet as something to monitor. But I think it could definitely get that designation sometime over the next week or so. All right, let's go ahead and talk about back home now, where we've got a big old storm system working into the West Coast, and that's just the start of a very active week of weather. Here's a storm system starting to work on in right next to me here into California. In fact, I'll move this over just a little bit so you can see it probably a little better here. Here we go. Very easy to find spin, and we've got just a slug of moisture getting thrown into the California here. I was about to name California whatever nickname it has, but now it is escaping me what the nickname of California is. So I'll have to look that up, or you can tell me in the comments. For example, like Florida's the Sunshine State, Missouri's the Show Me State, South Carolina's the Palmetto State. What is California? I'm not sure. But either way, today it's the state of storminess as that storm system's working in and producing plenty of lift out in front of it. You'll see why in a moment. Over through the Rockies, we're getting some pretty good snow into the Rockies as well. This first good snowstorm of the year, I'd say, for many, and cloud cover as well. Visible satellite, again, we're just getting going today, so the sun has a ways to go before it comes up fully over here, but all things considered, you can definitely see plenty of cloud cover developing and getting on through. So What about radar? Well, radar, another obviously a useful tool to use, and you can see the storm here as well. We've got pretty good rainfall here into California, even places like Los Angeles, right up through the Sierra Nevadas, getting it good. Although it'll be snow into the higher terrains out here, a pretty feisty storm, and then just some good old-fashioned showers all the way from New Mexico up through the Dakotas. Needed rainfall. We've had plenty of drought conditions across much of the country. We had the summer of flooding. Now, we could use the rain as October is one of the drier months for a lot of folks, especially here in the east. But yeah, getting some showers out of this right now nonetheless. I'll show you this. Why is it happening and where are we going to go from here? Well, I love my good old-fashioned mid-level vorticity maps, and it's no surprise why we have a storm system, because in the mid-levels, we've just got quite the fishing hook here. Anytime you see that on a weather map, normally means some sort of active weather is going to happen. Just a ton of spin out here. And remember, it's the right-hand side here where we've got these areas that these brighter colors are moving into. We call that cyclonic vorticity advection. And anytime you see that and a lot of diffluence are spreading out of these lines, that's a recipe for lift and a recipe for active weather as well. So that's why we've got what we've got going on right now. How's it going to progress, though? Well, this big system is going to plow through the Rockies over the coming days, get into the northern plains, and again, I think kind of form another strong lower-level system right through the Dakotas by the time we get on through your Thursday and Friday. And then we get a shot of another kind of trough that dips down into the east by this weekend, and that's when we'll need to watch for more impacts to the forecast. So let's go ahead and take a look at some models, show you how they're agreeing, how they're disagreeing, and what exactly those impacts will be from this storm system. Let me show you how the European model progresses this system, and you can see, obviously plows through the Rockies, plenty of higher elevation snowfall, lower elevation rain out here. And then, like I said, I think it gets a little boost in intensity here at the surface as it moves through the northern Dakotas, or the northern Dakotas, well, the northern plains is what I meant, and into the Dakotas rather. How about that? Obviously only one North Dakota, there's not multiple of them, but again, gets a little boost there, especially up into Canada, and then that one fizzles, and then we hypothetically, if the European is right, get a new surface low to develop over the Great Lakes. That one gets strong quite quickly, dropping down into the 990 millibar range. So obviously this would bring some whipping winds up into the Great Lakes, into eastern Canada, and a line of showers and maybe some storms through the eastern U.S. by this weekend. This is Sunday afternoon, pictured here on this model. So, definitely getting that going and really cranks this thing up and would be a pretty high impact storm into much of the eastern U.S. And then keeps the good times rolling with more active weather behind it. What about the GFS model? What does it show? Well, you can see there's that surface storm up into the Dakotas and into Canada over the next couple of days, and then also gets a second shot of storminess, but doesn't bomb it out like the European does. See, we get this slug of moisture that gets pulled up north here into the southern plains and into the deep south by early this weekend. It could still be important for severe weather, but you don't get this defined surface low pressure that reforms. It's still the same one that kind of occludes up here into Canada all the way up near the Hudson Bay and brings a big pocket of cool air behind it, but it's not as impressive of a storm system at the surface for the United States, at least, as the European shows. And then would just be some scattered shower and storminess, and then a big cool down behind it, potentially right around a week from now into the east is what a map like that would kind of pan out. So what do we know and what do we not know? Well, like I said, uncertainty pretty high in terms of the exact impacts, but we do see severe weather returning to the map here. This is by Saturday. Again, kind of the same places I showed you yesterday, but nonetheless, something we'll definitely need to watch here. Also expecting snowfall, and a lot of it into the Rockies over the coming days. Not quite talking snow into the east yet. Maybe Mount Washington up into New Hampshire will get something, but for most of us that live in normal places, not going to see any snow out of this. But the Rockies, on a different note here, absolutely will. Ski season getting an early start out towards the Sierra Nevadas, Yellowstone, all the way up through much of Montana and Idaho, and even down into the Front Range of Colorado. Do want to show you this, though. Same thing I ended with yesterday, and once again, I forgot to pull up today, is just another look at that uncertainty. It's a complicated upper-level map, as I showed you, with all that vorticity. Little changes mean big changes at the surface. So, pretty high confidence we're going to get a big low pressure up into the northern plains by Thursday, Friday. It's the secondary low that we have lower confidence on. The European has a lot of ensemble members showing it. differing in intensity, but a lot of them in that 990 range. So if that ends up being the case, again, by this weekend, pretty good windstorm, rainstorm, and all of that good stuff that would end up happening if the European and its ensemble members are correct. You could see them there. What about the GFS and its ensemble members? What do they show? Obviously, I love the ensemble, so we'll show it to you. Less certainty. Kind of on board with the European. Kind of on board. I would say trending in that direction, so maybe the European ends up winning this battle. Would not be the first time, but either way, plenty of time to track this. Again, the highest impacts would be this coming weekend, and it's only Tuesday now. So that's all. All right, that's all I got for you folks on this wonderful and happy Tuesday, about the halfway point through October. So turning on through the month. But yeah, continuing to track this, tracking the tropics, and definitely keeping you updated on that forecast. Y'all have a great one. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.